This is your Wednesday devotion, and it's interesting how everything kind of fits in. I was looking at the scriptures that I wanted to bring the devotion on, and the nightly news came on, and it said that there was a tremendous increase in the amount of colon cancers detected in young people, where the old guideline used to be when you hit age 50, you start to have colon checks. But now they're seeing colon cancer at ages like 23 to 35 years of age. They haven't fully identified the reasons for that, but nevertheless, it reminded me that Lois and I are at a place where we're due for annual physicals, and we're due for skin inspection by a dermatologist, and we're due for eye exams, and you start to understand why old people just talk about their health. They're constantly going to the doctor. But I know one thing that the skin doctor says is that self-exam is very important. I know when Lois goes in for her physical, it's again a self-exam to be sure there's no bumps or lumps. And so self-exam is important. And nobody knows your body like you know it, and so when something's irregular, something's not normal, you notice it far quicker than the doctor would. The same thing is true in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 23 through 32. It's dealing, first of all, on the Lord's Supper or communion, or the practice of taking the cup and the bread. Now, whether you do that in every service, or whether you do that once a quarter, or whether you do that on special occasions, that's a denominational kind of a thing, and even within denominations, very often a choice of the leader of that church or that denomination in that particular organization. So I'm not going to get into that tonight, because that's not the point of this particular devotion. We can talk about that later. But one of the things that it says in order to take of the cup and the bread is to examine yourself. 1 Corinthians 11, at verse 28, it says, "But a man must examine himself, and in so doing he is to eat of the bread and drink of the cup. For he who eats and drinks judgment to himself, if he does not judge the body rightly. For this reason many among you are weak and sick, and a number sleep." Now, sleep here means died. But if we judge ourselves rightly, we will not be judged. But when we are judged, we are disciplined by the Lord, so that we will not condemn among the world. It's a good idea to step back once in a while and judge yourself. It's like a self-exam. To take a look, because nobody knows the thoughts, the actions, the reactions that you have done better than you do. Oh, it's certainly very important before communion. Certainly very important before the Lord's Supper. But isn't it a good idea for us to check up on ourselves, not waiting for the Lord's Supper or communion? To just sit back in a chair and say, "Examine me, Lord. Help me to examine my own life, or the things that I've said, done, reacted to this week in a way that was ungodly. Is there something that I need to make right with you?" It says that when you don't do that before you take of the Lord's Supper, that many people are weak, sick, and some have even died. That's pretty serious judgment, isn't it? And so I think rather than just waiting for the Lord's Supper or communion, it'd be a good idea for all of us to take a time if not every day, at least once a week, and sit back and just ask ourselves, is there anything in my life that's not the way it ought to be? You see, I remember going into the doctor's office over a year ago, and I had a little spot here on my arm, and I said to the doctor, I said, you think this is anything? And he said, no, I don't think it's anything at all. And I said, well, they said that the test for melanoma cancer was irregular in shape, raised areas, and various colors. And I said, this particular dot seems to meet all of those criteria. He says, well, let me take a second look. And so he took his little special magnifying glass and he said, I don't think it's anything, but let's go ahead and take a sample. He took the sample, and sure enough, it came back melanoma cancer. And I'm glad to report that when I went in for a further checkup with a specialist who does removal and then dyeing and staining and making sure he's got all the cancer, that he didn't have to go very deep. And when the lab report came back, it said that there was not even enough melanoma cancer there to be included in a study of melanoma cancers, that there was virtually no cancer cells left after my first doctor had taken it off. But imagine, what if I hadn't self-examined? What if that melanoma cancer had continued to grow and spread throughout my body? Perhaps I wouldn't be making this devotion tonight. I wonder if sometimes our spiritual lives aren't just as seriously in danger, where we haven't stopped, taken a look, made whatever corrective actions we need to, so that we'd be pleasing in God's sight and we'd not be weak, sick, or died. It's your thought for the day. God bless you and have a great day.